Hi everyone, Cynthia with Greenstyle here. Today I'm going to show you how to stitch up the Seaside Swim Bottoms from Greenstyle. Follow along with me and I'll show you every step of the way. Enjoy! Here are the pieces you'll need to cut to make your Seaside Swim Bottoms. You'll need one front and one back piece made out of your main fabric. Choose between a higher rise or a lower rise and be sure to cut on the line that matches your choice. These are labeled H2 and H3 on the pattern pieces. You could alternately use H1 and cut them both as one piece, then you wouldn't need to stitch them together at the crotch. You'll need the same pieces out of lining fabric as well. I've cut both my lining and main using H2 and H3. You could do H1 for the lining or the main and use H2 and H3 for the other. The main benefit to using H2 and H3 is that you can conserve fabric by cutting strategically. For the full waistband option, you'll need one outer back and one outer front, and you'll need one inner back and one inner front. You can choose between a higher rise or a lower rise, so make sure you cut on the line that corresponds with your choice of rise. If making the crossover waistband, you'll need to cut one crossover waistband piece. Choose either piece B1 mid-rise or B2 high-rise. To begin construction, we'll pin the front and back pieces at the side seam. Start by laying your back piece on the table with the right side up and lay your front piece on top of it with the right side down. Align the side seams and pin. If you chose options with pieces H2 and H3, you'll also need to pin at the crotch. Do this for both the main fabric and the lining. Take these over to the machine and you'll stitch up those seams using a stretch stitch on your sewing machine or a serger stitch. Be sure to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Working with swim lining can be tricky because it's slippery and likes to move out of place. Just go slowly, use plenty of pins, and make sure you keep those edges lined up together. I also recommend using some scraps from your cutting to practice stitches on your machines before actually stitching the pieces that are meant for your garment. That way you can check all your settings and make sure that you have your tensions correct. Now we'll attach the main and the lining pieces by basting all around that waist opening and the leg openings. Bring both pieces over to your table and open them up. We'll start by turning the main pieces right side out, and then we'll turn the lining wrong side out. And here I'm showing you that the seams of my lining are facing outward. So you'll slip the lining inside of the main piece, and the wrong sides will be touching. Match up the side seams on the top and on the bottom. I like to always push the main side seam toward the back and the lining side seam toward the front. Pin the edges of the lining and main fabric all around the waist opening and both leg openings. Once you've got it all pinned, take it over to your sewing machine and use a basting stitch on those 3 openings. That is a straight stitch with the longest stitch length. And here they are, all completely basted. From here on out, we can treat the main and lining fabric as one piece. To begin the leg elastic, we'll start by cutting a piece of 3/8 inch elastic using the cutting chart on page 8 in the tutorial. Bend it into a circle and overlap the ends by about 1 inch. Stitch those closed using a zigzag or serger stitch. When attaching the elastic to the leg opening, we'll not be stretching it evenly around the entire leg opening. We will be stretching it more in the back. So the way I do that is to find about the middle of the front of the leg opening, and then I find the actual halfway mark on the elastic and halfway mark on the leg opening, and I put another pin there. Now go back to that pin around the middle of the front leg opening and begin pinning the elastic to the front of the leg opening. You'll stretch the elastic very slightly, but not very much at all, and pin almost all the way till you get to the side seams. Check and adjust the elastic on the front leg opening to make sure that that elastic stretches just a tiny bit, and adjust if necessary. And here you can see that the back leg opening's elastic stretches quite a bit more. Adjust if necessary. To attach the elastic, I like to use my sewing machine. I use a zigzag stitch with stitch width of 3 and stitch length of 3. If this is your first time making a swimsuit, I recommend using the longest stitch length to attach it, to try it on first before committing to it. I'm very picky about leg opening elastic and have made many adjustments to mine in the past. If you use a long stitch length, you can remove it and adjust the elastic more easily. Begin stitching the elastic right along the edge of the fabric, and you'll want to make sure that the fabric is flat and doesn't have any folds or buckles in it, but do not stretch the fabric at all. This is a good time to try on your swim bottoms and make sure that that leg elastic is snug but not too tight. At this point, you'll fold the fabric under one time so that the elastic is fully enclosed inside the fabric. There will be a raw edge of fabric inside of your garment. You can pin all the way around like I'm showing, or you can just fold as you go. The elastic will serve as a great guide for folding. I'm using a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine. You can also use a twin needle or your cover stitch machine for this step. Stitch all the way around to fully enclose that elastic and finish that outer edge. To make the full waistband, we'll begin with the outer, back, and front pieces. We'll place them right sides together and pin on those side edges. We'll do the same with the inner or lining pieces. Once they're pinned, we'll stitch all of those short ends. Stitch these 4 seams using a serger or a stretch stitch on your sewing machine at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you're using your sewing machine, it's very important, as always, to grasp those thread tails and gently pull them to the right as you begin your stitch. This will ensure that the sewing machine doesn't pull that delicate lining fabric into the machine as you begin to sew. Turn your outer waistband with the right side out and the inner waistband with the wrong side out. There you can see the seam of the inner waistband sticking out. And slip the inner waistband into the outer waistband. Line up those top edges. And here you can see how my lining fabric is trying to be naughty. That is so delicate and it folds over very easily, so just be very careful and make sure those raw edges stay aligned. We'll stitch with a stretch stitch or serger. Open up the waistband and then we'll refold it so that right sides are out. We will now match up the bottom edges of the waistband, and I like to always check and make sure those side seams don't twist on the way down. So I start pinning at the side seams and then go all the way around and match up those bottom edges. Being very careful to keep those raw edges aligned, we will go through and baste the entire bottom edge of the waistband. For the crossover waistband, we're working with a single piece. You'll start by placing it on your table, and then you'll fold it wrong sides together along that long bottom edge. Grab one of the points and fold it in toward the center like so, and then grab the opposite point and fold it in toward the center. The bottom points of the ends will meet and the top points will land along the long edge of the waistband. Stick a pin into that very center point, which is the 2 bottom points, and then find one of the top points and pin it right along the edge. Find the second point and get that pinned as well. I'm not stretching the fabric at all during these steps. I'm just making sure that it's all nice and flat and even. Baste where you overlapped and pinned the pieces together, but I actually recommend to just go ahead and baste around the entire waistband. Follow these steps to attach either version of the waistband. Take your waistband right side together with the bottoms and match up the point of the waistband with the point of the front center on your bottoms. Just like so. And then you'll grab a pin and hold it in place and take it over to your sewing machine. We'll use a standard straight stitch for this step. So you want to get your bottoms and waistband under your needle so that the 3/8 inch marking along that center point is exactly under your needle. Be very careful to drop your needle down right at that center point, and you can remove your pin and lower your foot. And now you'll turn your bottoms so that you'll be stitching a straight line away from that point, and you're going to stitch about 2 inches down. Stitch just a couple of stitches and then backstitch to lock them in place. This is more essential if you'll be using your sewing machine to finish the waistband. Now turn your bottoms around so that you can stitch again from that center point, but going in the opposite direction. Carefully line it up so that you can again drop your needle into that same exact starting point. And now you'll stitch another 2 inches but going in the opposite direction. And as you can see here, I didn't manage to drop my needle down at the exact same center point, so I'll go in and tweak that to make it look nicer and to use my seam ripper to remove those couple of stitches that go off in the wrong direction. But once you're happy, find the center back of the waistband and the center back of the bottoms and pin them together. At this point, you can take it over to your serger or use a stretch stitch on your sewing machine to attach, but I always like to baste waistbands on before I permanently stitch them on, so that's what I'll show you here. Find the point of the V, and you are going to place it under your foot of your serger, and you're going to stitch a straight line straight onto that V right at the point. Use a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you're using your sewing machine, you can begin your stretch stitch right where you ended your straight stitch on those 2 inches away from the center point. Just make sure all of the stitches on the center point are locked with a reverse stitch at the beginning and end. Continue stitching all the way around the waistband, and when you get to the opposite end of the V, you're going to stitch straight off of that V in a straight line. Don't try to curve around the bottom, just stitch straight off. And here I'll show you that I have 2 intersecting lines right at the point of that V. And at this point you can remove those basting stitches that are sticking out of your main stitches. And you're all done. Enjoy your new Seaside Swim Bottoms.